They didn't shout his name. They nailed it to wood. A single sheet of paper hammered into every post from Virginia to Maryland. One line at the top. Reward, $1 million. Not for land, not for gold, not for a murderer, for an escaped slave. Men laughed at first. Then they reread it, and the laughter stopped. By the time the notice went up, the plantation was already unraveling. The morning bell rang. No one answered from the east field. The overseer stormed through the quarters, kicking doors open. One sleeping space was empty. No chains broken. No blood. No struggle. Just gone. Escapes happened. But this one was different. Because this man wasn't fast, wasn't young, wasn't reckless. He was careful. For years he had watched. Not the masters, the patterns. Which patrol passed first? Which guards drank too much? Which dogs lost the scent in rain? He worked harder than anyone, spoke less than anyone, and learned everything. 3 weeks before his disappearance, he was noticed. Not for rebellion, for silence. He stopped flinching, stopped lowering his eyes, still obeyed, still worked. But fear was gone. That scared them more than anger ever could. The owner ordered him sold south. No warning, no delay. A place where escape meant death. The papers were signed. The wagon was scheduled. But storms don't wait for paperwork. Rain erased footprints. Thunder erased sound. And sometime before dawn, he walked away. Not running. Walking. Like someone who knew exactly where he was going. Dogs were brought in. They circled, whined, lost the trail at the river. Hunters checked the banks. Nothing. No broken reeds. No dragged chains. It was as if the river itself had swallowed him whole. By day 3, whispers started. He knew too much. Names, routes, drop points. If he reached the wrong ears, plantations wouldn't just lose labor. They'd lose control. That's when the reward changed. 10,000, then 50, then 100, until finally $1 million. Enough to make men cross states. Enough to make killers turn professional. Enough to make this personal. The first hunter left within hours. Then another. Then groups. Men with reputations built on never failing. They followed tracks. They followed informants. They followed fear. And one by one, they vanished. No bodies found. No messages sent. No proof of survival. Just silence spreading faster than the reward posters. Because now the question wasn't whether the escaped slave was alive. The question was, why no one? The first hunter was known for patience. He didn't rush, didn't brag, didn't drink. He followed trails the way other men read books. He reached the river 2 days after the escape. Found nothing. But something bothered him. The water was calm. Too calm. No signs of panic. No torn brush. Whoever crossed hadn't fought the current. He had used it. He tracked north instead of south. That was mistake number 1. Everyone assumed the fugitive would flee deeper into wilderness. But north meant towns, crowds, noise, places where a man could disappear without hiding. The hunter stopped at a tavern just before dusk, asked careful questions. No name, Bendizen, no description, just a single sentence. Did anyone pass through here who didn't belong? The tavern went quiet. One man shook his head. Another stared at his drink. A woman near the hearth spoke without looking up. He didn't ask for help, she said. He asked for directions. The hunter slept upstairs. At dawn his horse was gone. Saddle cut clean. No tracks leading out. Only one leading toward the woods. 2 more hunters followed. They came together, armed, confident. They traced the riverbank farther north and found something new. A campfire. Cold. Ash scattered carefully. Whoever left had erased their presence. Except for one thing. A symbol scratched into stone. Not a warning. A marker. They argued about it. One said it was meaningless. The other said it wasn't meant for them. They split up. That night, neither returned. By the end of the week, word spread fast. Not fear, confusion. Men were disappearing without gunfire, without struggle, without witnesses. No blood, no bodies, just absence. Plantation owners changed tactics. They stopped sending hunters alone. They hired groups, ex-soldiers, men who'd tracked rebels, men who'd survived ambushes. They believed numbers meant safety. They were wrong. A patrol of 6 was last seen near an abandoned mill. Smoke was reported. Gunshots were heard once. Then silence. When another group arrived days later, they found the mill untouched. No damage. No bodies. Only 6 rifles stacked neatly against the wall. Cleaned. Loaded. Left behind. That was when fear shifted sides. Because rifles aren't abandoned by accident. They're surrendered. Rumors grew teeth. They said he wasn't alone. That freedmen were helping him. That he moved at night and vanished by day. That he struck without being seen. That he chose who lived. But the truth was worse. He wasn't building an army. He was building space. Space where fear couldn't follow. And the hunters still didn't understand one thing. They weren't chasing him anymore. They were being allowed to follow. By the time authorities realized this wasn't a manhunt, it was a trap. The trail had already gone cold. And the silence ahead was waiting. The town thought it was safe. A place too small to matter. Too ordinary to hide danger. 3 roads in. 3 roads out. No walls. No guards. Just a church, a mill, and a sheriff who believed order was permanent. The escaped man entered at noon. Not running. Walking. Hat low. Shoulders relaxed. He didn't avoid people. That was the trick. Fear hides. Confidence blends. He went straight to the general store. Bought bread, salt, a needle and thread. Paid in coins no one recognized. The shopkeeper hesitated, then took them anyway. Outside, a boy watched him. Didn't stare, just noticed. The man met his eyes, didn't smile, didn't threaten, simply nodded. The boy nodded back. That was enough. By sunset, whispers moved faster than footsteps. Someone said he was here. Someone else said he wasn't alone. Another said hunters were coming. The sheriff heard last. He didn't panic. He sent a man to the telegraph, sent another to the church, and waited. The hunters arrived after dark. 8 of them. Quiet. Professional. They didn't storm the town. They circled it, blocked roads, watched windows. Patience had replaced pride. Inside the church, candles burned low. People gathered without being told. Not to pray, to listen. The man stood near the back, not hiding, not leading, waiting. A woman spoke first. "They'll burn us," she said, "if they don't find you." Silence answered her. Then the man stepped forward. "I won't fight here," he said. "Not in your homes. No speech. No promises. Just a line drawn." The sheriff entered late. Saw him. Recognized him. Not from posters. From war. "You were Union," the sheriff said quietly. The man nodded. "Then you know what they'll do," the sheriff said. "Yes," the man replied. "That's why I won't be here when they try." A plan formed without words. Doors opened. Lights went out. People moved. Not panicked. Purposeful. When the hunters finally entered the town, they found it empty. Food cooling on tables. Beds unmade. Candles still burning. They searched house to house. Found nothing. No man. No townspeople. No clues. Near the mill, they heard footsteps. Followed. Found the boy. Alone. "Where did he go?" one hunter asked. The boy shrugged. "He didn't run," he said. "He waited." That night the hunters camped in the square, surrounded by silence. By morning 2 were gone. No sound. No struggle. Just missing. The rest fled. Left town untouched, unburned, unclaimed. Weeks later, families returned. Homes still standing. Fields untouched. No one said his name. They didn't need to, because the town learned something permanent. Freedom doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes it walks in, fixes what's broken, and leaves before dawn. And far beyond that town, the bounty kept rising. But fewer men answered the call, because the stories were changing. They no longer asked where he went. They asked who disappeared after following. And the trail ahead wasn't leading away anymore. It was leading through places that remembered him and protected him. Even after he was gone, the reward doubled after that town. Not quietly, publicly. Printed bigger, stamped harder. Read aloud in rooms where men used to volunteer. They called him a contagion. A myth that needed to be killed before it spread. So they raised the price again. And again. Hunters started traveling in groups now. Not for strength. For witnesses. One group swore they found his camp. Cold ashes. No tracks leaving, only tracks circling back. They argued about direction. Never finished. Another crew followed a tip from a preacher. Paid him in advance. They rode out confident. Returned without him. That's when something shifted. Not fear, doubt. Because the stories no longer matched. He wasn't attacking towns. He wasn't stealing. He wasn't leading revolts. He was simply passing through. And every place he passed through stayed standing. Plantations along the routes began losing workers. Not in escapes. In silence. Men stopped reporting runaways. Stopped filing claims. Stopped asking questions. They understood something dangerous. If they admitted he was near, they admitted control was already gone. So the system did what systems always do when cracking. It turned inward. Betrayals started. Hunters selling hunters. Guides misdirecting parties on purpose. Informants disappearing after payments cleared. A marshal tried to restore order. Called a meeting. Promised protection. Promised shares. 3 men spoke up, volunteered. Left together. None returned. The marshal burned the bounty notices himself. Said nothing. Far from all this, the man kept moving. Never staying. Never settling. Never returning to the same place twice. He learned which towns remembered him. Which roads whispered. Which doors opened without knocking. A woman once asked him how long he'd keep. He answered honestly. "I'm not running," he said. "I'm thinning the hunt." Winter came. Snow erased tracks. Silence grew teeth. That's when the last escalation happened. The one meant to end it. They announced a deadline. A final reward. Everything pooled. Everything offered, not for his capture. For proof of death. No one came forward. Weeks passed. The deadline expired. They extended it. Still nothing. By spring, the notices stopped appearing. No announcement. No admission. Just absence. Because the truth had spread too far to contain. You could place a price on a man, but you couldn't force anyone to chase him anymore. The system didn't collapse that year. It weakened. Quietly. Like rot beneath a floor. And somewhere beyond maps and papers, the man vanished. Not caught, not killed, simply no longer needed. Because by the time they stopped looking for him, they were already afraid of what came after. And what came after didn't need a name. Years later, people argued about when it truly ended. Some said it ended the day the bounty notices stopped printing. Others said it ended the first time a hunter refused payment. But those who lived near the old routes knew better. It ended when children stopped whispering his name. Not because he was forgotten, but because fear had changed direction. Plantations adjusted quietly. Locks multiplied. Patrols doubled. Rules tightened. Yet something essential never returned. Certainty. Men still claimed ownership. Still carried papers. Still spoke the old language of control. But they checked the tree line when they did. Stories began surfacing from places far apart. A broken chain found beside a river. A cabin door repaired by someone who didn't stay. A wounded man healed and told to keep walking north. None of the stories sounded heroic. That's what unsettled people. He wasn't grand. He wasn't loud. He didn't preach. He moved like consequence. Once, a former slave catcher drank too much and spoke too freely. Sighed they never lost him. They lost the will to look, because every man who went searching came back changed. If they came back at all, the fear wasn't of death. It was of surviving and realizing something irreversible. That the hunted could choose when to be seen. That the chase was optional. A merchant later claimed he met him. Didn't recognize him at first. Just another traveler. Quiet. Polite. Paid an exact coin. The merchant asked if the stories were true. The man smiled, almost tired. They needed them to be, he said. After that, records thin out. Courts stopped mentioning the bounty. Ledgers skipped pages. Maps were redrawn. Historians would later argue about exaggeration, about myth-making, about unreliable witnesses. But they never explained one thing: why the largest reward ever offered for a single escaped man was never claimed. No body, no proof, no celebration. Only a slow realization spreading through the system. You can hunt a man. You can price him. You can surround him. But once people stop believing the hunt will end well, power starts bleeding out. And that was his final act. Not killing. Not vanishing. But teaching the world that some pursuits cost more than they're worth. Long after his trail disappeared, one phrase survived, passed quietly, from mouth to mouth: don't chase what doesn't need to run. And the land remembered, even when the papers didn't.